Hi everybody. Today we are talking about lesson 4.3. Hopefully my camera comes on here. So we're talking about lesson 4.3. I'm on page 205 in your book. And we are working on comparing and ordering integers. So I'm going to turn you around so you can see the book. There we go. All right. So today we're talking about integers. And remember, integers are any number. We talked about that in a previous lesson. Any whole number, okay, or any number that we can express. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a whole number. All right. So to compare integers, you can compare the signs as well as the magnitude or size of the numbers. If the signs are different, the positive integer will always be greater than the negative integer. So if we take a look at 2 and negative 3, 2 is a positive number, so we know for a fact that positive is always bigger than negative, greater than negative. So 2 would then be greater than negative 3, and we use that greater than symbol right there. So if the signs of the two integers are the same, you can use a number line to compare them. So we can actually graph them onto a number line. And whatever is furthest to the right, okay, so go in that direction, furthest to the right is going to be the greater of the two numbers, or more numbers, however many you're comparing. So here, if we graphed negative 2 and negative 3, negative 2 is here, negative 3 is here, negative 2 is furthest to the right, so negative 2 would be the greater number, greater integer here. All right, so turning the page to 206. So I'm going to continue to compare integers. It says here that Justin has a score of -5 on the Trueville trivia game. Desiree scores -3. We're going to write an inequality. So an inequality means that we're using the greater than or less than symbols. Then explain the meaning of that. So now, to write our inequality, if you're not certain, because they are both negative numbers, we can graph them on the number line. So Justin's score was a -5, so I put a dot at -5. Desiree's score is a -3. I'll put a dot at -3. And then we ask ourselves, which number is farther to the right on the number line? In this case, it would be the -3. So our inequality that we would write would be -3 is greater than -5. Now, we're explaining the meaning. Since -3 is greater than -5, which value has a greater score? We would say -3 has a greater value. All right. Now, let's go ahead and do our check here. Remember, you guys should be doing this one. Andrew and his father are hiking near Tacklebox Canyon. Their current elevation in relation to sea level is -38 feet. I'm going to start by writing that value down. Tacklebox Canyon has an elevation of -83 feet. So we're writing an inequality using the elevations. Now remember, we use the less than or greater than symbol, okay? So when we look at these two values, which one would be further to the right on a number line? The further one to the right on a number line would actually be -38. And so this is the symbol that we would use. This is how we would write that inequality. Now, for explaining the meaning of the inequality, we would say that -38 feet is a higher elevation than -83 feet. Okay, so that's how we would write that, explaining it. All right, now moving on now to page 207. We're ordering sets of integers. We can use a number line to order a set of integers from least to greatest and from greatest to least. So if we're given these values, -8, 3, -1, 0, and 6, and I needed to graph them, All I would do is put points where I see those values. -8, 3, -1, 0, 6. And then we just simply list them. Left to right if you're going least to greatest, or right to left if you're going greatest to least. So here we have example 2. This table shows the lowest accessible elevations for several continents. And we see the values here. We're going to order the continents from least to greatest according to their lowest elevation. So once again, I go ahead and I plot those points. Okay, Antarctica, boop, Australia, there we go, North America, right there, and South America, right there. So which continent has the least accessible elevation? Well, we look at our list. What's the furthest to the left in this case? That would be South America. Okay, which continent has the greatest? That would be our -15, which is Australia. So if we were to list the continents in order from least to greatest, it would go South America, which was our least, North America, Antarctica, and then Australia. So we're going to go ahead and do our check here. This table shows Kesha's cell phone use over the last 4 months. Okay. Positive values indicate the number of minutes she had remaining, and negative values indicate the number of minutes she went over. We're going to arrange the months from fewest to most minutes remaining at the end of each month. So fewest to most, so least to greatest. We're going to start by looking at our list. Oh, okay. Our lowest value obviously is going to be a negative number, and we want the least value here, which would actually be February. So I'm going to start by putting February. Then I'm going to use my other negative number, right? May. Then we're at April, which is 0. And March, finally. There we go. So that would be our values that we would put here. All right. Moving on to our Learn page. Distinguishing absolute value from order, which is on page 209. So we know how now to order numbers when you see them on a horizontal number line. The values increase as they move to the right, and the values decrease as they move to the left. What happens to the absolute value or magnitude of numbers as the values increase or decrease? Since absolute value is the distance, remember, absolute value, the distance a number is from 0, the absolute value increases the farther the number is from 0. As the positive value increases or moves farther from 0, its absolute value also increases. So there we go, we see that. As a negative value, it decreases or moves farther from 0, its absolute value increases. So negatives are a decrease and an absolute value increase. So here we go. Suppose Cato and Ember are scuba diving. Cato dove to 25 feet below sea level. This can be represented by the integer -25, and you should be filling in these values with me. Ember dove to 30 feet below sea level because it's below, right? We're still talking about negatives, so a -30. So who reached a greater depth? So now we're talking about the absolute value. Who has a greater absolute value? Well, -25 is 25 away from 0, right? We would say this is an absolute value of 25. -30 would be an absolute value of 30. So which one here would actually be greater? Now, even though -25 is greater than -30, the absolute value of -30 is 30. And the absolute value of -25 is 25. So in this case, the absolute value is greater with the 30. So that's how we would compare it. So we could say that Ember's depth was greater. All right, moving on to example 3 on page 210. Explain why an account balance less than -$40 represents a debt greater than $40. Well, debt is the money that is owed by one person to another. An example of an account balance less than negative $40 is negative $50. Write an inequality comparing the two amounts. Well, in this case, we know that negative 40 is greater than negative 50. But if we wanted to talk about the amount of debt, in this case, the absolute value of negative 40 is 40. The absolute value of negative 50 is 50. So negative 50 in this case would have a greater absolute value, which means negative 50 or a debt of $50 means that is the larger debt. Okay. So here's our check. If we have negative $5 and $5, obviously 5 is greater. But if we were to compare, we would know that they're equally distance away, but we actually are owing this amount. Okay. So this you wouldn't owe anything, whereas this one you would owe something. All right. So here we go. The table shows the freezing point in degrees Celsius for 6 substances. This is our apply problem. Nitric acid freezes at negative 42 degrees Celsius. Between the freezing points of which two substances is the freezing point of nitric acid? So what you might want to do in this case is list this out least to greatest, and then you would figure out between which 2 points would negative 42 fall. That would be your apply question for today. All right, flipping you around here. There we go. So, as always, please make sure to go ahead and try that apply problem. That's always a great idea for you. Make sure you send me your answer once you found it. I'd love to know what you discovered. And make sure to complete your homework online. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'd be happy to help. All right, have a great day, everybody. Bye.